Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the MJ SportsCast. My name is Mike Tang. I am joined by my host Jerry Yang. Jerry, how you doing today?
A little somber because Steph Curry yesterday got injured. It seems like the MRI revealed it's a ligament sprain and he's out indefinitely. Like we just got Draymond Green back. We got Clay back originally, right? Finally got the core three together, thinking we're
Hmm.
going to start rolling and string together some wins. And then I think the Celtics played a really aggressive game against the Warriors, and now, fortunately, Curry's out. And this type of injury is unpredictable. I mean, we're seeing, the good part is MRI revealed that it's not a broken bone or something like that. So at least there's that going, but it's still not ideal, right? But I guess what are your thoughts on it? Are you as somber as me, or you see the light at the end of the tunnel here?
Um, I think I see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Yet, with the way this organization has treated injuries, they're very cautious and they don't really like to tell us exactly when the player is expected to come back, right? So at the minimum, we're probably expecting the Warriors to rest Curry for 2 weeks
Mhm.
minimum, right? And that's already towards the end of the season. And this Warriors team and this organization really wanted to finish the regular season strong and have like everyone intact so then they could gel, for the beginning of the playoffs. With Curry being out, it's really tough to do that
Mhm.
here. So how long is he out? We don't know. It could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks, but him being out is really going to hurt the Warriors' chances. Um, Especially since we're probably not going to get the second seed at this point, right?
Mhm.
And we're probably going to have a fairly tough, first round matchup in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I think what I've read, or I think you actually sent this to me, it sounds like it could be 7 to 10 days as a
Yeah.
best case scenario, but it'll be 4 or 6 to 8 weeks as a worst case scenario. And I think Anthony Davis has like a similar injury and was out, still out, I guess, after 4 weeks. So, I'm okay with the organization being cautious because we saw what happened with KD, right? I think that's a lesson learned where they try to rush a guy back. It could lead to a longer term injury. So I'm okay with that. It's just kind of sucks, man. It's just a bummer. That's all. I guess what can you do? It's like one of those things that unfortunately happens. The good news is I think Wiseman's coming back soon, right? He's gonna play his fourth game in the G League tonight, and hopefully he gets promoted soon. And they can still gel without Curry, and maybe this is a good test for the Warriors too, because
Hmm.
they're giving a lot of minutes Curry, and I think having him out for a little bit can really be a practice run for what happens if Curry's on the bench. So they wouldn't be so reliant on him, and maybe guys like Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins can step it up a little bit and become more of a force, right? And they still have Clay at least, and Draymond's back, so that's gonna be good. And hopefully we get Iguodala back soon as well. So I don't
Hmm.
think the Warriors are completely out of it. It's just gonna be definitely a big hit without Curry since he's a lot of the offense here. So
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Last night, it was like around 9 o'clock p.m. Pacific time here. And, we have this stuff about Curry with the MRI, after the Celtics loss here. And then Freddie Freeman is breaking, where it's like, okay, he signed with the Dodgers for like, what was it, 7-year contract
yeah.
here. So the Dodgers, they just keep restocking talent, in their organization. So that was a pretty tough hour, I would say, for the Bay
Yeah.
Area. You
And no
know,
kidding. It was a 6 year, 162 million for Freddie Freeman. If like the Padres signed them or maybe the Cubs signed them, some obscure team signs them, I would have been okay. But now the Dodgers are just so stacked. Like what's the point of the luxury tax if one team's super stacked like this? So
yeah.
we'll see if it pays off for them. But man, they just keep getting better and better. Doesn't it seem like it?
All right, so let's kind of talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the kind of the quarterback situation with the 49ers here. Once the playoffs concluded, everyone thought the Niners were going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo and that there would be, a large number of suitors for a guy like him. But, some circumstances happened. Jimmy G decided to elect for shoulder surgery. A lot of us thought it was a thumb that required surgery there. I'm not sure if that's why a lot of teams are scared, to look into a guy like Jimmy G. And then Deshaun Watson, right, is back in the market, and he hasn't been signed as of today here. Do you think it's possible, Jerry, that Jimmy Garoppolo will remain as a quarterback of the 49ers, either in a backup role or even as a starter this coming season?
I mean, Eric Armstead, Kittle, and D4 restructured the contract to free up 18 million, right? I think on Wednesday it was actually anticipated that was a deadline, Wednesday 1 p.m. that they had to be under the cap, and at the time there were 4 million over at the time. So with this restructure, I mean, it could keep Jimmy G, but 25 million for another for a guy that's going to be there for a year, and also you're kind of stunting Trey Lance's growth, right? Are you gonna really put Jimmy G as a backup if you're paying him that much? And couldn't you use 25 million for someone else, like maybe O lineman, because we know like Tom Compton's gone, right? I think we'll get into that later. Lincoln Thomason's gone, so you lost like two O-line guards there, like a solid one. So presumably you're going to try to get one in the draft. And fortunately, this season is very deep. I think we talked about it last time, pretty deep in the offensive line. So even in the second round, you can probably get a good like right tackle or right guard. But you're kind of taking your chances there, right? Because it's going to be a rookie lineman. So linemen's, I think, translates pretty well from NFL to college for the most part, but it's not a sure thing, right? So I think the problem with Jimmy G is I think everyone knows that the Niners have to get rid of him, right? Like there's no real keeping him, and if the Niners released him, obviously there's not going to be a big cap hit to Jimmy G. But that also means a team can negotiate with Jimmy G and sign him for less than 25 million and not give up draft picks.
Yeah.
So to me, they don't have any leverage. Like they, as in the Niners, have no leverage in this situation. So for them to demand, I think the demand is to get 2 second round picks. I think that's asking a lot. Like even a second round and a third round is asking for a lot, and that's why you're not seeing a lot of movement in the market. But potentially, if Deshaun Watson signs with the Saints, which sounds like might happen because he met with the Saints again yesterday. Saints is one of the teams out of the three, and it seems like the Browns pulled out. So now I think it's coming down to the Falcons, the Panthers, or the Saints that's gonna trade with Houston for Deshaun Watson. I think once Deshaun Watson's out of the market, then I think Jimmy G's stock kind of goes up a little bit, and maybe we'll see some action. But then you also have a guy like Marcus Mariota out there, right? That's also in the market to be traded, and maybe he's more desirable because he has less injuries and all that stuff. I think the biggest upside really for Jimmy G is just the leadership skills, and the playoff experience. But outside of that, it's slim pickings for him, and the contract doesn't help, So
What do you think about Jimmy possibly staying with the 49ers
I
here?
think it'd be awkward. I think it'd be
Do
awkward.
you think the Niners are a better team overall with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance on the roster as opposed to just having Trey Lance and Sudfeld as the quarterbacks, right? Which option would you rather take at this point? Option A, or would you go for option B? Because if you go for option B with Trey Lance is a bit inexperienced, right? And he has shown that he has raw physical talent, but he has also shown that he may not be mentally ready for the football side of things here. And, if you have Jimmy G as kind of insurance, I think that makes the 49ers a much stronger football team overall.
But the problem is a $25 million contract, right? So maybe if they restructure, they work something out, sure. But what if the Niners go on a 5-game losing streak, what do you do then? Do you pull Trey Lance for Jimmy G? You know, like those type of questions will come up. Like an injury for sure. You're gonna start Jimmy G. He can probably string together a few wins for Lance to come back. But if you start going downhill, you're gonna start creating a quarterback controversy on your hands, you know?
What about that scenario?
I don't know.
Jimmy G recovers from shoulder surgery and then he regains his starting position starting off the season there. Then he's on a short leash. Trey Lance could learn a little bit more throughout the beginning of the season and then eventually take over the reins, maybe mid-season. It's something to consider, right?
It's something to consider, but I think at this point, especially if you see Jimmy G's end of the year press conference, I think he's already said goodbye to the team. The team has said goodbye to him already. You know, I think they're both parties are ready to move on, whether they release them or they trade them. I feel like it's in the interest of both Jimmy G and the Niners at this point to
Yeah.
part ways. You know, your scenario definitely is possible, but I just don't think it's likely. That's the problem, right? But
Yeah, I think logistically speaking and financially, you want to maybe just go with Trey Lance and then have that $25 million cap or that amount of salary to be dispersed, with the other players. But at the same time, I think the quarterback position is the most important position on the field, right? And we do want that insurance plan because, what happens if Trey Lance panics in the pocket like he has done in his rookie season? He goes off running and he gets injured. And all of a sudden you have Sudfeld out there for maybe the remaining set of games or maybe for 4 or 5 games. So it's just
well,
something I think that fans and the team should consider. And I'm sure they have. I'm sure
right.
they have considered this situation if teams are not going to bite on any trade offers.
Well, I think they're still going to get a backup quarterback. I think Studfield's going to be like a third stringer. I do think they're going to get an experienced backup of some sort. If it's not Jimmy G, it's going to be someone else that could take the take the field for a couple games. You know, like I
I'm not
think
sure if that backup quarterback is going to be better than Sudfeld at this point, right? I think the ideal guy would have been Tyrod Taylor, but he was signed, I think, by the Giants
Mhm.
this past week here. So it's really going to be tough to find a quarterback
Yeah.
who knows the system like Sudfeld and who's capable of winning, regular season games. So,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
That's true. That's true. It's gonna be not as good as Jimmy G, but like you said, the ideal situation is if he can somehow take a lesser contract, you know. And I'm
yeah,
not sure he's willing to do that. I think Jimmy G wants to be a starter in the league, right? So unless you're going to guarantee him as a starter during the season, it's not going to happen. I think, and I think he's already dealt with a lot last season of whether or not to be the starter or to be the backup that I
mhm.
don't think he wants to go through that situation again. You know, so if you think about it from his perspective, I think he's ready to move on, right?
Yeah. In an ideal situation, we would get maybe two
Yeah,
fourth round picks, out of this here. I'll take 2 4th round picks for
dude, at
Jimmy
this point, I'll
Garoppolo at
take
this point.
anything, dude. I
Yeah.
think a fifth round pick will even be great at this point, right? Because it's just saving 25 million and you get like a draft pick. I think that's ideal for everyone versus just releasing them, you know. So,
Yeah.
so we'll take it. We'll take it. So.
Yeah. In addition, the Niners have made a pretty splash signing in terms of solidifying the cornerback position here. Travarius Ward, he has been signed to a 3-year, $40.5 million deal. He previously played for the Kansas City Chiefs. Here, he has some pretty good numbers according to PFF here. And, he went undrafted. That was kind of surprising to me when I first found that out. He went undrafted there, but he filled it. He filled in, with that role pretty nicely for the Chiefs. Did you like the signing for the 49ers, or do you think it was too much of a risk, signing a guy like that?
No, I think it was a good signing because he's only what 25 years old too, so he's like a
Yeah,
pretty young cornerback, relatively, right? You're not looking at Josh Norman or Stephon Gilmore types. I think once J.C. Jackson was off the field and Davis from Tampa Bay was re-signed with Tampa, I think he was the best cornerback and free agent out there at the time. So I think the Niners did a pretty good job. And going against tradition, right? I think in the past, they haven't signed a big cornerback in the offseason, especially a young one that can actually do a lot in on the field. So I'm excited for this signing. I think that's going to help the secondary a lot, and you complement him with, you know, not Moser, with Thomas and with Eman.
Well,
It's gonna be
yeah.
great. I think our secondary got a lot better, and I think the Wards out there, right? Jimmy Ward and Javarius Ward, they're going to be a pretty solid safety cornerback duel. So it's finally, I guess we have a guy that's going to be good for us for at least the next couple of years. So
It'll
I'm
also be
happy with
nice if
this.
it'll be nice if the Niners can draft a cornerback too, um, to
I
just
still
kind
think they
of
will. They drafted two last season, right? So it's kind of like, would they really want to draft another one? I think with this signing, they're not going to do it. I think they're going to focus more on the offensive line. I think in the draft, and perhaps like I don't know what else, right? Like maybe another running back because Moster's gone now.
yeah.
Maybe another wide receiver because Sherfield is out, and maybe even a quarterback, right? Like just like a third stringer to Suffield, I guess.
I
Who
think
knows?
they will draft another cornerback just because I think Kwan Williams will probably explore his options elsewhere too. So they're going to need a nickel back, and maybe they're going to put Ambry Thomas in that role for third down here. So as we saw this past season, you can never have too much cornerback depth, right? Because
True.
once everyone is signed, that free agent market is pretty dried up, as we saw.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we still don't know what's gonna happen with Verret too, right? So we're kind of waiting on that news, but we'll see. It sounds like he might resign, but who knows? But
Yeah.
I think that'll determine whether or not they pick up a cornerback in the draft or not. So we'll see.
What are your thoughts about Raheem Mostert and Trent Sherfield moving on and signing some 1 year deals with the Dolphins here? Kind of,
It's kind of funny to me. It's like Mike McDaniels is creating the 49ers of Miami, right? Like all these former players going there. I'm not too surprised. It's kind of similar to what we thought with, the Jets and how former Niners are going to these coaches. So it's not too surprising. Would have loved to see Moster stay, especially I think 1 million, 3 million for $3 million is a pretty good deal. It's a pretty fair deal for someone like Moster because it's still kind of a prove it deal. Sherfield, I'm not too sad about. I think he kind of fizzled out near the end of the season, right? I think Jawan Jennings kind of replaced him in his role, so I think the Niners were okay with him walking away. Maybe that's the thinking behind Mostert as well. You have Elijah Mitchell that kind of plays what Mostert's role was. So I don't think it's a huge loss with these two guys. The biggest loss to me, I think, was Lincoln Thomason, letting him go, but I don't think the Niners could afford that contract. It was like 3 years, 40 million, max value of 41.2 million with 27 guaranteed. I don't think the Niners had any cap space to get close to that, especially with Debo and Bosa's contract coming up. So I think that was a bigger loss in terms of like immediate impact, right? But all the other signings, I think it was fine. It was fine to let those guys go.
yeah. I mean, looking at these running back deals, they're not getting paid a whole lot for the stuff that they do. If I was to pick a position and get paid in the NFL, one would probably be being a top 20 or top 15 quarterback. That's guaranteed 25 million a year. And then also being a wide receiver in this league, right? I would rather be a wide receiver than say a tight end or a running back at this point. We saw what Christian Kirk got from Trent Baalke in Jacksonville. He got a pretty nice contract for not doing a whole lot for Arizona the past the
But
past couple of
Jacksonville
years.
did a lot of questionable signings, right? I think Trent Baalke being Trent Baalke over there, he's spending money and getting mediocrity in return. So, but I get your point. I mean, even Chris Godwin signed a pretty massive contract with Tampa, and then Yeah, we're not seeing a lot of love for the running backs. I think Allen Robinson actually signed with the Rams today as well, and that was a massive contract.
Yeah,
Um, so like you said, really pays to be, pays to be a wide receiver, I guess.
yeah, definitely. Ready to move on to some baseball stuff?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I think the last time we spoke, the lockout was still going on, right? Or
Yeah, yeah.
did we overcome that already? But baseball's back. They have signed onto some agreements here. There's been a whole lot of moves going on, but let's kind of talk about some of the rule changes that were agreed upon here. I'll just mention a couple here, Jerry, and then you can mention the next
Yeah,
field. But universal DH, both in the NL and AL, I think this has been long overdue, to be honest with you. Here, just because, gosh, we just see how poor offense is for the National League, especially with the pitcher hitting. They're hitting below 200 for the most part here, and I just think it was long overdue that we have the universal DH and then the 12-team playoff system here. I don't really have too much of an opinion about this, but it seems like the right amount of teams, to be honest with you, which would be what, 6 teams from each league
yep.
here out of 30 plus teams in the MLB. So I think that was pretty fair. Did you want to mention the other few that was agreed upon?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the nine inning games are double headers now. I think it was reduced to what, like 7 last season, and then there's not going to be runners to start extra innings. And the one that really hurts me the most, I think, is they're not going to allow the advertising on jerseys and helmets. Kind of like the clean jersey. I don't know about you, right? But it sounds like soccer has always been doing it, and then NBA kind of took it up, and now I guess baseball is doing it too. Only a matter of time before your NFL jersey will have it. you know?
A matter of time. This 75-year thing is going to be replaced pretty soon.
It'll be like a Pepsi or a Coke, logo instead. So that one I think kind of stinks in the sense that, man, I like clean jerseys, like in general as a fan. But
Yeah.
whatever, not a huge impact of the game, I guess.
Yep.
But I think what's more interesting is what we talked about last time, right? I think all the rumors about no defensive shifts, larger bases, and a pitch clock. It sounds like 2023 it's going to be official. So those rules and rumors came to fruition, but they're going to start next year. I
Yeah.
think we talked about last time. I thought defensive shifts were good to get rid of
Yep.
larger bases, whatever. Pitch count hopefully speeds up the game. So
Do you
yeah.
know why larger bases are preferred? Is it just so you can like step on the base more
Yep.
clearly when you're rounding the base pass? Is that the main
That's why I
reason?
read. It sounds like it was more of a safety thing, not
Hmm.
to get hands stepped on and things like that. So it was just a safety thing. I don't think there was any other reason behind it, but yeah, I thought that
Uh,
was interesting
that's
too.
pretty cool, and I think I like the pitch clock too, just to speed up the games and everything.
It worked in the minor leagues, right? They found out that it saved them at least like 20 minutes a game, So it's I think that's really good. Especially it's like different for runners on base versus no runners. Just the only thing I worry about is, can it be abused by the batters somehow? I'm assuming they're gonna start the clock when they're at the plate, right? You can't burn so much time from the batters, but they have to see how they navigate that, right? I think those type of controversies are gonna come up. I can imagine it coming up, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think MLB's challenge in the long run is how are they going to get the younger generation to be more enticed into the game, right? Because right now, I don't think there's a real superstar that really gets kids, jumping out of bed or, playing
Come on,
outside.
Otani doesn't get you excited.
Well, a guy like Otani he's just really tough to market,
How
right?
about Mike Trout?
Mike Trout's he's the kind of guy that doesn't really do a lot of marketing himself, you know. Um, so it's tough. It's really
Yeah.
challenging because we grew up in the '90s and we already had superstars in place, Barry Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr., Mark McGuire, and those guys here. But this generation's it's a whole lot tougher So MLB really needs to figure out what their marketing initiatives are, moving forward after this season.
And I think the lockout kind of hurt him too, in terms of that direction. By having this lockout, having all this negative attention, it definitely doesn't help. If anything, it's moving the opposite direction. So I agree with you. I think they have to really work on their marketing and get all the stars back out there. So we'll see if these rule changes will help with that.
Yep. All right. Well, the Giants, they've made a couple signings themselves. One is for pitcher Carlos Rodon, 2-year contract, $44 million. Previous All Star, left-handed starting pitcher, throws over 95 miles per hour, has great stuff, but at the same time, he does have some injury concern here. And then the Giants also agreed on a contract with outfielder Jock Peterson, a former Dodger himself. Do you like the signings from the Giants?
Well, let's start with Rodon first. I think that was a solid sign, right? We needed starting pitching. He was what, third in the Cy Young run, in the AL, right? So I think that was a pretty solid signing. I thought he was the best, I think, starting pitcher that was still available. So I think the Giants did a really good job by signing him and also to a short contract. So the injury concerns, at least it's only 2 years, so you can kind of see what he's about. I thought
Hmm.
it was better than Kevin Gosman, so that kind of made sense why they let Gosman walk away. At least Carlos Rodon is a kind of a proven player, so it's
Yeah.
I think that's good. Jock Peterson, like the pearl necklace, the personality. I think there's a little bit of rehabbing that needs to happen with a Giants fan because he was a really arrogant player, especially playing for the Dodgers, and he won back to back World Series with the Dodgers and the Braves, and maybe he can do it 3 times. But you got to respect the stuff, right? I think his offensive prowess was pretty good, and I don't know how he is in the outfield, but we definitely need outfielders. So worst case scenario, he could be our DH. Now that there's a universal DH, guys like him probably would be good. It sounds like he's really clutch in the playoffs as well, so that's going to be hopefully helpful in the long run. But would
I
you
thought
would
it
you
was an excellent, yeah, I thought it was an excellent signing, to be honest with you. I think it's a big upgrade over guys like Dickerson
yeah.
here. And he does have athleticism in the outfield. He's proven that he can hit. He's proven that he could hit in the playoffs
Yep.
here. And just has pretty darn good experience because you can never have too much outfield depth, right? And you can also use that outfield depth and plug them in into the DH as
Yeah, it's
well.
only 6 million for 1 year, right? So you're kind of taking low risk on them, really.
Yeah.
So I can see a lot of value in that signing.
And then I think a lot of people were surprised at the Carlos Rodon deal here, and that Farhan gave him 2 years, 44 million, or if you want to spread it out, that's $22 million a year, right? But I think Scott Boras, his agent, did a really good job of including an opt-out clause at
Yep.
the end of this season, meaning that the player can opt out, and become an unrestricted free agent after this season. So it's kind of like a win-win, to be honest with you, for the player here, because we want him to do well, but honestly, do we want him to do too well to the point where he's going to leave us? So,
Like this is a interesting article I was reading on the Athletic. I think Grant Brisbee wrote it, but has the Giants become kind of a launching pad organization by not spending long-term contracts, right? And I think we'll get to Chris Bryant as the example because Chris Bryant signed a 7-year, $182 million contract. Why doesn't the Giants take chances like that? Like why are we so conservative when it comes out dealing contracts? Because now you're creating these short-term contracts for relatively low amount of money. Are players like Carlos Rodon or Kevin Gosman just going to join the organization as a launching pad and then go to another team and become a long-term star? And I think we're kind of digging ourselves in a hole by doing that, right? And especially with like MLB and the luxury tax being kind of a joke. I mean, we're seeing that with the Dodgers and Freddie Freeman signing a long-term contract, and the team's already pretty stacked, right? Why can't the Giants shell out a little bit more and do that? Like, what are they saving all this money for, right? So it's like,
I think the Giants organization have been a little scarred from giving out these long-term contracts, right? They've been scarred with Matt Cain. Basically, after Matt Cain received that huge contract, I don't think they got a good year out of him.
right.
Basically, he was injured or didn't play very well for most of his contract there.
But you gotta
So,
take a chance though, right? I mean, you have one example where it didn't go well, but I mean, you're gonna have other examples where it did go well, like Buster Posey, for example, right?
mhm,
He definitely turned out to be like the guy we thought he would be, especially on offense. I think the longevity of players on offense is a lot longer than your pitchers. So obviously, yeah, Matt Cain and maybe even Bumgarner, if they
yeah,
gave big contracts, it could be a big risk that they avoided with Bumgarner. But come on, like your position players, those guys stay around for a long time. And why couldn't you take a chance on a guy like Chris Bryant?
right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting to talk about, like on how conservative the team is.
Yeah, I think with the right player and at the prime of their career, I think the Giants are willing to give out those long-term contracts. But we saw how Chris Bryant played for the Giants at the end of their season,
Yeah,
right? He wasn't really that great, to be honest with you. He had a great debut and he had a great first couple weeks playing for the Giants there, but honestly, he felt very underwhelming. Um, his defense was really lacking as well, even though he could be very versatile. So he wasn't really great at one thing defensively, and also his bat has been sputtering over the past couple of seasons. So I think Farhan and the organization just didn't feel comfortable giving Bryant more than 5 years.
yeah, no, I agree. I think that contract is a little ridiculous if you ask me. Actually, 7 years, 182 million. I think that was way overpaid. So I'm kind of glad Giants didn't make that deal. But at the same time, like you said, saving it for the right player. But who is the right player? Like we do need a third baseman now, sort of. I think Eva Longoria is there, but he's not our long term solution, right? So we have to
Hmm.
see what happens in that position. And we actually have a comment, Andrew Peterson. Hey guys, hey Andrew, how's it going? How are the A's? I don't think the A's have been making many moves, but go. Thanks Andrew for tuning in.
Well, they did trade Matt Olson,
Oh,
one of the
that's
top
true.
three
I
first
did see that.
basemen in the league, to Atlanta here, and that was one of the reasons why Freddie Freeman was traded away. You can blame the
Hmm.
A's organization for doing that, right?
Thanks, A's. Thanks a lot. Andrew Peterson's. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, it's rough because I think the A's got a pretty good haul for Matt Olson and some of the players that they traded, but it's always really tough to be an A's fan because you're just recycling through a lot of star players over and over again.
Yeah, and Andrew Peterson says A's have traded Matt Chapman, Olsen, and Bassett. So, same old A's, right? Like just recycling players.
Yeah.
Always been tough. Like I tell my sister-in-law was a big A's fan. Like never buy a jersey with a name on it with the A's because you might not see the player the year after. So.
It doesn't hurt. It really doesn't hurt to buy like a retro jersey and getting like a former player, for the A's.
Yeah,
That's the
Timo
safe bet.
McGuire's
Yeah.
Jose Canseco jersey,
I think
that
Ricky Henderson, number 24, would be pretty
yeah,
nice.
that's
Yeah.
solid. Andrew says, and Maya Montes probably going to the Yankees. Yeah, I know. I read about that too. So we'll see. Until you guys get the stadium, I think that's the blocker, or at least the pressure they're putting on the city by not winning. So
All right, let's move on to our pick of the week.
all right, not a lot of games to pick because the Warriors aren't playing. NFL hasn't started back up. Obviously, baseball is still not started. So, we'll just do a regular season win total. Still really early. Obviously, Giants still has to make a lot of moves before we can really say for sure. But at least pick it now, and then right before the season start, maybe we can see if we change our mind here. But regular season wins for the Giants, 85.5. What do you have, Mike, as over under?
Looking at this, initially it looks pretty crazy because the Giants just won 107 games this past
That's
season.
what I'm thinking too, but
And I think last season was what, 82 games was the
yeah,
over under
yeah,
before
it
before the
was.
season
It was
started
low.
here.
I think it was 79 actually. It got super low.
Yeah. So Vegas really sees a big drop off, for the Giants. But at the same time, everyone is thinking the Giants will be third in their division again, right? They think the
Yep.
Dodgers and the Padres will be favored. But I just believe in this team way too much here. And I love the signing of Rodon, Jock Peterson. I don't think they're done yet. I really
I don't
don't.
think so either.
So I really love the composition of this team. So I'm definitely going to pick the over, and I'm going to pick 90, 92, 93 games. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that 85 is a little ridiculous. Obviously, it's going to change if we make like a splash signing. I think right now they're kind of thinking that if the Giants enter a season today without signing anybody, maybe 85 is right on the nose, right? But yeah, I think Giants are going to make a move. So I think 85 definitely. I like your pick of 80, 91, 92 wins. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I'll say 95. Yeah.
95.
It'll
Wow.
be I think this will be 10 over. It'll blow this over under out the water. So
Wow. All right.
and then Andrew Peterson said we should pick the Sharks and the Kings tonight. I'm gonna go with the Kings because Sharks. I don't know if they've been on a losing streak, but the last game I went to, they lost 8-0. So that was really disappointing. So I'm just gonna say they're gonna lose. What do you think, Mike?
I'm just going to pick the Sharkies in this one here, just because I think they're going to go to they're going to go to the Kings and try to find a win, but it's just tough, for hockey fans right now too.
It looks like they've been going on a two-game winning streak. They did lose to the Panthers in the last game at overtime, so maybe the momentum has shifted. But I don't know. I'm still gonna pick the Kings. And then Andrew Peterson says Giants should have signed Chapman for third base. I think there was rumors around that actually, right? So we'll see. And then always beat LA, Jerry. Yeah, I know. I would chant that, but I feel like they're still gonna win.
Yeah, I think the Giants are okay with Longoria and Flores, as their third basemen at this point here, and they're just kind of waiting to be let go of Longoria's contract
I know.
before putting on a reset at third base.
So maybe that's why they're so traumatized as someone like Longoria being locked up for so long, right? And I guess who do you think will play DH? Is it gonna be rough or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to be very matchup based here. It could be rough. It could be any of the outfielders, on the roster here.
Yeah.
And yeah,
No, I like the DH though. Like you were saying, maybe we didn't talk too much about it, but I think it's a good idea. Just injuries and like it's so boring to see someone bunt as well, and or being an automatic out.
well,
So I
it's
think
just
it's good
a
for the game
it's
overall.
also you want to reduce the injury risk to the
Yeah.
pitchers trying to bat, right?
Yep.
Because that's not their forte. Their forte is pitching, and they just don't prepare to be in the batter's box,
I
and they
know.
just look overwhelmed all the time. So
And the pitchers that can bat can be the DH, right? Like we're seeing that with Otani, being the DH during his days off, and same with I'm assuming Bumgarner will be like that for Arizona, right? So we'll have to see how that plays out for the Giants, but yeah, like you said, injury risk. I think who was it that got injured? Maybe it was a couple seasons ago because he was batting. Maybe it was Bumgarner, right? But yeah, definitely reduces the risk. And I think it's overall good for the game, like you said. So,
all right. Well, thank you everyone for listening this week. We'll tune in next time. Take care.